us in the
Hi
chat box.
everyone, today everyone probably already know that we'll be discussing intestinal diseases and our intestinal health. Talking about intestines, let us get to know more about the intestinal structure. And intestines are basically a very long pipe, and its starting point is our oral cavity and the ending point is our anus. So oral cavity is also part of our intestines. In between, it goes through our stomach, our small intestines, large intestines, and ends at our anus. So for intestines, many knows that it has to do with our digestion, and it is also known as digestive system. Besides breaking down food and helping us to absorb the nutrients that can bring great functions to our body, our intestines could also help us to detox and excrete waste. So it actually has great functions. While we're at the digestive system, one important point is that if our intestines are healthy, we will be able to effectively absorb the nutrients that our body needs, because these nutritional substances would affect our body functions. And in our intestines, the longest part, like our small intestines, it is actually 4 to 6 meters long. And our large intestines are a bit shorter. So though the intestines are able to fit in our body, it is actually a gigantic and long system. It's very, very long. So let us have a better understanding. Actually, what are some common intestinal diseases that we might have? Earlier, we mentioned that intestines starts from our oral cavity and ends at our anus, right? In our whole intestinal system, the most common area to have the diseases is our large intestines. And of course, our small intestines and stomach would often have a few problems as well. But in comparison, the rate of our large intestines to get sick is much higher. And as for small intestines, it usually have what is known as intestinal ulcers and polyps. Or like our small intestines might have what we call getting a knot or volvulus. Or it might be some chronic diseases related to our blood vessels. For instance, in our intestines, the blood vessels might have thrombus or etc. And due to insufficient blood supply, our intestines might have chronic problems. Or our small intestines might have tumors and etc. After small intestines comes our large intestines. And our large intestines are about 1.5 meters long. Its main function is to absorb water and electrolytes, which contain some sodium. And next, actually, in our large intestines, it contains many bacteria. After the large intestines absorbs water, it is left with residue, which will become feces later on. And thence it contains many bacteria, but at the same time, it also has a lot of good bacteria. And therefore, the health of our large intestines has to do with the ratio of our good bacteria and bad bacteria. It actually has a really big impact. So what are some problems that you would see? From the picture, we can see that there are numerous types of colitis because intestinal inflammation can be divided into many types, such as chronic or ulcerative. And our large intestines might also grow polyps. So as for polyps, right, if we don't monitor it, in the long run, it would cause colorectal cancer. So this is something everyone is more familiar with. And therefore, besides these three, the lower part of the large intestines, so large intestines has like 3 sections. Well, the lower section, which is over at our anus, might have some problems too. So there's this one common problem, which is constipation. Constipation is a sign that your large intestines is unhealthy. And I realized that ladies get constipation more easily than men, especially 2 weeks before menstruation. And this issue would surface. Besides constipation, it might be because you have constipation for a really long time, yet you didn't find the right ways to resolve it. It might cause hemorrhoids. So for hemorrhoids, it might hurt for some, while others might not feel anything at all. And it grows near our anus. Well, if it's not outside the anus, like some hemorrhoids forms in the inside while some forms on the outside. So there are two types. And when hemorrhoids burst open, or maybe when you're pooping and your feces is too hard, it would pierce through the hemorrhoids and it will bleed. So your feces, your stool would have like blood and stuff. And usually hemorrhoids bleeding are bright red in color. If you don't take care of it for like a long time, what will happen? So as you're frequently bleeding, this will lead to anemia. And this is something very common. Another one that leads to bleeding is anal fissure, which is probably because of long-term constipation. And since your stool is hard, you will use a lot of force to force it out, right? Which leads to the blood vessels around over at the anus to rupture and injure. And this would also lead to blood and stool. Another situation is that it isn't bright red in color, but it's black instead. So it's not that your stool is black, but because maybe some parts of your large intestines, small intestines, or even stomach areas are bleeding. And this blood has stayed in your body for a long time. So it turned black, and it's not bright red, but black. For this, we need to pay more attention to it. Because at times it might have something to do with cancer, colorectal cancer. So today, whether if your stool has blood that's black or bright red in color, you should seek for treatment. I know that some of y'all might be afraid to speak about it because it's awkward or something, but honestly, there's nothing to be awkward about. You should seek for help, for the help of professionals. And while it's still not that severe, hurry and seek for treatment. Because a few precautions can prevent some unnecessary severe problems. And there's nothing to be afraid of, just take care of it. Well, maybe you don't have the symptoms stated above, or maybe you do. Well, how should we tell whether if our gut is healthy? How do we know whether if our gut is healthy? Well, but if you have the symptoms I've mentioned earlier, you already know that you're not that healthy. And for some, you might even need to seek for doctor's help. If you don't have these symptoms, that doesn't mean your gut is super healthy either. So let us have a look. There are 3 main factors for you to observe whether you have any signs of unhealthy gut. The first one is intestinal functions. Our intestines starts from our mouth, right? It isn't just necessary on our large intestines, as I focused more on large intestines earlier. So if you have intestinal functions, if your intestinal functions started having some abnormalities, for instance, frequent indigestion, or maybe you're unable to withstand many types of food. For instance, maybe you ate foods with high oil content and you feel very uncomfortable, or maybe eating certain foods makes you have allergies. So these are all because your intestines are slightly malfunctioning, or your body is not in the greatest condition. Or maybe you get bloated easily, stomach aches, or diarrhea. These are all because your intestinal functions aren't that great. And another one is influenced by stress or emotions, which leads your intestines to malfunction. The most commonly seen problem is constipation and indigestion, bloating, and stomach aches. Okay, so the second point is that we need to see whether our intestines, how do we say it? Like red flags, which are some symptoms that you should pay particular attention to, which includes what I've shared earlier. Well, it also includes like if you notice that you suddenly lost a lot of weight, even when you didn't attempt to diet, it just like declines a lot. So, or like maybe you have anemia, or like, so how do we know whether we have anemia? Well, which is when you look very pale, or you're always tired, or some might be even because of, or some might even cause difficulty in breathing. So these are all symptoms of anemia. Or maybe you have dark circles, hair loss, etc. And suddenly you realize that, hey, my farting frequency is different from before. Maybe you notice that sometimes you have difficulty to poop. Well, this is definitely true. And maybe besides stomach pain and looking pale, another thing to pay attention to is stool condition. And here brings us to the third factor, which is stool condition. I'm not sure if you guys will look back after using the restroom, or do you just flush and leave after using? Actually, you need to observe your own stool condition. Okay, so how should we know? Let us have a look. There are 3 key factors you need to observe. The first one is the frequency of your bowel movement. So normally, 1 to 3 times a day is considered normal. More than 3 times means you have diarrhea. And if you have less than 3 times in a week, it means that you have constipation. It's not normal. But for me, I think a normal person should have at least once every day. Actually, once every 2 days is still considered normal according to the medical standard. But in my opinion, it's not the best. Okay, so besides frequency of bowel movement, stool condition is very important too. Whether it's soft or hard can say whether you have constipation. Just because you have bowel movement doesn't mean you don't have constipation. So like if your stool condition is very hard and dry and you have to use like a lot of pressure to force it out and the amount is like very little too, yet the food you intake did not decrease. So actually this is also a sign of constipation. Everyone can look at this picture on the right. From the first to the third, counting from top to the bottom, 1, 2, 3, they are considered hard feces. And the best is the fourth one, the middle one. So this type of stool can be eliminated easily without any anal fissure. And then from the 5th to the 7th picture, they aren't the most ideal, as the stool are kind of loose, maybe because its absorption of water isn't as idealistic, it's infected by some bacteria, or like the functions of your large intestines are abnormal, which causes its inability to form a healthy stool shape. Besides that, stools smell and color. Yes, it's normal for stool to smell. But if the smell is like wow, why does it stink so bad? And like maybe even the people outside can smell it, or like the smell lingers in the restroom for a long time, well, this is not a normal sign. Actually, if you eat more meat, your stool would smell more. I'm not sure if you notice, but if you eat more veggies, the smell of your stool wouldn't stink that bad. And another is its color. If you notice that besides being stinky, your stool smells a bit sour as well, that means that it's not normal too. Because like maybe it's because you have intestinal ulcer that festers, which leads to sour smell in your stool. So as for the color, it's what I mentioned earlier, which is if you notice there's blood or it's dark in color, yeah, you didn't eat any iron supplements. Oh, I want to say that there's one scenario where you will have poop that's very dark or black in color, is that if you eat iron supplements given by doctors, and that will also lead to very black stool and might cause constipation as well. Okay, but if you didn't, yet your stool is still dark, you might need to pay attention. And another thing is parasites, because your feces might have some roundworms or like parasites, which means that your intestinal have worms. So after using the restroom, do observe whether the color and the shape of your stool is normal. Another one is that if you do not take care of the condition of your stool and the frequency of your bowel movement, Like if you do take note of the condition of your stool and the frequency of your bowel movement, yet you suddenly realize that the frequency changed, or the stool, like maybe it's really thick, but then suddenly the shape is like suddenly really thin and skinny. So you should be aware about this when this happens, as it might be because there's a tumor in your intestines, which causes them to be really narrow. So when stool forms, it will be like really long and thin. And this needs to be paid attention to. And this is why it's really important to frequently observe your stool condition. Okay, after learning about what we need to pay attention to, so now, what should we do to maintain intestinal health? Okay, the simplest way is to intake dietary fiber. Eat more fruits, vegetables, and multigrain foods. So how much dietary fiber is enough? For females, we need 25 grams a day. For males, 38 grams a day, and one serving of fruits and vegetables gives you 3 to 5 grams. So if you need to replenish enough in a day, you have to consume at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. So we also recommend multigrain. Why? Because if you eat white rice, 1 cup of cooked rice only contains 0.6 grams of dietary fiber. But if you eat brown rice, 1 cup of cooked rice is 3.5 grams. The difference is huge. So if you eat brown rice, you'll be getting more dietary fiber unknowingly. And if you have more dietary fiber, your stool will be able to hold moisture better, and what we call as in bulk. So it would help with better bowel movement and would promote bowel movement as well. We need all types of dietary fiber. And the second one is to eat less red meat and processed meat, because studies have already proven that colorectal cancer is directly influenced by processed meat and red meat, especially processed food, as it contains certain substances that leads to cancer. And in the processed meat, for sure, it has some artificial substances added into it. So we need a decreased intake of these, such as like smoked ham, bacon, cold cut turkey slices. So all these are processed meat. Whether it is canned or smoked, do decrease these intake. And quit smoking and alcohol. This is for sure. Alcohol and cigarettes would increase, especially alcohol, it would increase the risk of getting hemorrhoids. And this is why many guys have this problem. And next is sufficient water intake. This is very important, because if you keep increase your dietary fiber, but you don't drink enough water, it would also lead to hard stools. So drinking water should be paid attention to as well, because I received too many inquiries about drinking water. Like the more you drink, the more you eliminate. That's because you chug water. Instead, in a whole day, maybe like every half an hour or 45 minutes, you should drink some water. And it's not about chugging water only when you remember it. That's not idealistic. Lastly, is to seek for suitable supplement. From my understanding, at first, if you didn't condition your body, you do need some supplements to help with like a smoother bowel movement, such as to promote our digestion. While we're at supplements, what type of health supplements can help our intestines to detoxify? Okay, this is mainly focusing on our large intestines function. So we can, of course, as mentioned earlier, our intestines needs some assistance. And after getting the assistance, you can condition your daily dietary intake and lifestyle habits so that you can maintain healthy intestinal function. And that is why some people have constipation problems or have like bloating. And this is because, firstly, its intestines are getting lazy. Maybe because you're lacking exercises, as well as lacking dietary fiber and water. And that is why your bowel movement isn't that great. So your large intestines needs your assistance to promote its bowel movement, to help it contract and relax so that it can move the stuff inside. And second, its maybe because your stool is too hard, especially when you have constipation. You already have many fecal impaction, like very hard stools, so you need something to soften it. And lastly, is after pooping successfully, you need to provide your gut with a balanced environment. This means that you need to promote it with good bacteria. And with these three main factors to help with your large intestines and through dietary intake, exercising, and a healthy lifestyle, you'll be able to maintain a good bowel movement and functions. So everyone can consider Lactose S, especially for those with severe constipation, as it can help with the three main points mentioned earlier. The first one is to promote bowel movement. And through lactose, when it reaches our large intestines, it would be broken down by the good bacteria. And during the process, these bacteria would release CO2. And CO2 are gases, right? So these gases would expand our intestinal walls, which is the walls of our intestines. And it would massage it and put pressure on it. So when our large intestines expand, it would stimulate it to have movement. So the principle is like when you go for exercises or massages, it would stimulate our intestinal walls and it would help with large intestines movement and hence move the waste in our large intestines like stool. So next, Lactose S also contains dextrin. Dextrin is a type of water-soluble dietary fiber, and it acts as a sponge and can help absorb the water and toxins in our large intestines. Because when these types of water-soluble dietary fiber absorbs water, it would turn gel-like, and it has like a gel-like form to it, and it can help you eliminate the waste together. So this is somehow like a cleansing for your gut. And next, we need to balance out our gut environment, right? So it contains 1 billion probiotics, and which is known as Bifidobacterium longum. So this type of probiotic is very commonly found in our large intestines. Of course, we need to pay attention to its probiotics. It's not as simple as just putting any types of probiotics in it. You need to ensure that the probiotics is acid resistant and can reach our large intestines alive. So in Lactose S, the probiotics it contains has been tested and it has a high survival rate. After consuming it after 3 hours, it still maintains at least 80%. This is what we call effective probiotics, as it isn't damaged after consuming. Besides Lactose S, this is for when your condition is severe. You can also drink tea to detoxify your body and benefit intestinal functions. So over here, we have a tea called wind tea. Over at its packaging, it wrote like a bunch of components that we don't understand. Actually, those names are scientific names for plants. And over here, I won't put the scientific names. I put some that everyone can understand. So the main components is green tea, lotus leaves, Acanthopanax senticosus, senna leaves, and persimmon leaves. And Acanthopanax senticosus are like berries, and dried senna leaves looks like that, and persimmon leaves are the leaves of persimmons. All these are some natural plants. For this tea, it's a combination of each components with its specific functions and reasons. So for green tea, it is a great antioxidant and it contains many polyphenols. So polyphenols are great antioxidants. And there are also many studies about green tea on how if you drink green tea and if you do exercises, it can help promote fat burning and boost our metabolism. So if you want to have a nice figure, green tea is great for you. Besides that, lotus leaves, what does it help with? It helps to eliminate heatiness and toxins. it helps you to detoxify. It's like a diuretic that helps you to increase production of urine. And with that, it also allows you to eliminate toxins and heatiness. This is suitable for those with high cholesterol or those with rheumatism. And through elimination of water, you can get rid of the toxins. So as for acanthopanix it has another name known as Siberia ginseng. All right, so it has functions that increase our immunity, helps to supply blood, regulate endocrine, strengthen bones and muscles. So it is also beneficial for our bones and muscles. And besides acanthopanix senticosus, there's also senna leaves. And looking at its name, you know that it can help to cleanse our intestines and promote bowel movement. So for those with constipation, it is effective in this aspect. And it also has antibacterial effects. Lastly, for persimmon leaves, it is beneficial for our cardiovascular diseases. It also has the function to activate blood to remove blood stasis and to soften our blood vessels, increasing the vessel's elasticity and to reduce blood viscosity. And in short, it is known as activating blood circulation to dissipate blood stasis. In traditional Chinese medicine point of view, this combination, besides helping us to detox, slim down, it is also beneficial for our health in general, especially for our cardiovascular system, because drinking tea is actually a pretty good method to take care of one's health. And Chinese will probably understand this principle. So this is why we should pair these two together. Lactose S is consumed on an empty stomach, and you should prevent eating solid foods during the 4 hours after consuming it, because you need to clear out your intestines first and then only eat solid foods. So actually liquids is still okay. So for more severe condition, or if you're getting ready to slim down, for the first 3 to 6 days, you can consume 1 sachet. And then afterwards, you just need to consume it once a week for maintenance. And during the days when you're not consuming lactose, yet you want to detox and stimulate your gut, you can consume Wen tea. And don't consume Wen tea and lactose on the same day. Like, don't overlap them. So for Wen tea, right, it's suitable for after you finishes your meal. And I'm pretty sure those who drink tea would know already. It's best when you drink it after you're done eating. And it's actually just tea bags. So 1 tea bag a day, or like 1 to 3 tea bags a day. So since it's a tea bag, you can keep using it, and you can keep using the tea bag for about 3 times and then throw it away after when the taste is gone. So this is like a daily maintenance. You don't need to consume both in a day. And you should look at your body's condition too. So that's it for my sharing. Hope that after learning about today's topic, everyone has a better understanding of taking care of your large intestines and to be able to maintain a super healthy gut and to no longer be affected by constipation or stomach discomfort. See you guys next time. Bye.